Thank you for your patience with us this morning. Ministers of Culture for the Caribbean community and visiting delegations, permanent secretaries from visiting delegations, members of staff and the team from the Division of Culture Prime Minister's Office and the National Cultural Foundation, representatives from the Caribbean Development Bank, representatives from the Inter-American Development Bank, representatives from the University of the West Indies, representatives and staff from the Guardian Group, representatives and staff from the National Cultural Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, creatives, welcome. I am Dr. Donna Green-Rusnigi, the Director of Culture Policy and Research here within the Division of Culture Prime Minister's Office in Barbados. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this session entitled Banking on Culture. This morning, we will focus on the process required for policy development, planning, programming, and profitability. We will examine how data, policy making, and financing influence the profit margins of the region's creative and cultural industries. Data is vital for attracting investment to the Caribbean CCIs. However, due to budget constraints and competing demands from other sectors, public financing for the industry has lagged behind its needs. Unfortunately, private sector investment has also remained stagnant because the sector remains unconvinced about the industry's economic capabilities due to a lack of data. This dearth of information on the economic impact, the demographics, and the viability of the Caribbean's cultural and creative industries presents a problem for attracting private investment. Today, we are going to unpack what that means for policymakers, creators, and investors. This discussion commences with a panel on data led by the Caribbean Development Bank and is followed by an overview from UNESCO on Monday Occult, the global platform for cultural policies, the importance of evidence-based policy making, and embedding culture in national development strategies and planning. We will then enter the realm of the big conversation, make it make sense, where we reimagine financing, rethink creative funding, equity, innovation, and sustainability. This journey will conclude with an in-depth discussion on the impact of finance from creatives themselves. Both the Caribbean Cultural Fund and the UNESCO Creative Caribbean Program will spotlight their grantees and they will bring their practical experiences to the table. This is important, particularly for policymakers and investors, where we can have first-hand information and the narrative on how financing can be the thin line between sustainability, continuity, or business closure. Today, we will take a deep dive into the cultural and creative industry's eco-cycle, from data to design to development to delivery, from planning and programming to profit. Therefore, without much further delay, I will now commence today's session by inviting Ms. Melanie Joseph from the Cultural Industries Creative Innovative Fund at the Caribbean Development Bank to now present the first panel.
The Caribbean win!
Innovation, dedication, collaboration, developing nations. CIIF, CIIF, CIIF.
This creative fund assisting everyone in 19 countries of the Caribbean. We've got music, fashion, art and festivals,
technology, digital economy.
we're talking about regional integration.
CIIF, CIIF. Innovation, dedication, collaboration, developing nations. CIIF, CIIF. Innovation, dedication, collaboration, developing nations.
A project by the Caribbean Development Bank.
Good morning, all. I am Melanie Joseph, the Fund Coordinator of the Caribbean Development Bank's Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund, CIIF for short. or CIIF. It is my absolute pleasure to facilitate this first discussion panel of the day. This panel is actually CIIF's 8th Creative Talk event, and it continues a well-aligned tradition of promoting stakeholder engagement through relevant conversations, and we've done so at CARIFESTA before in 2019. But today's conversation builds upon something introduced under our last CIIF Creative Talk theme, and we began looking at the importance of data and how it informs and should inform development policy and strategy. So the evolution of Caribbean cultural and creative industries holds significant potential for wealth creation and other related positive impacts. Many parts of this ecosystem are not standardized or optimized for sustained economic benefits coming from all of the different areas that we now have access to, such as intellectual property, looking at international export markets and opportunities for products and services. One of the areas that has been identified, is that within the enabling environment, changes there and impacts there can influence the overall ecosystem through standardization, evaluation, and implementation of support mechanisms at national levels. And that's where we start this conversation. Cultural registries, national cultural registries and databases. Those are two approaches that are implemented to address these gaps, right? So a cultural registry or database is a framework, an organized collection of information related to cultural assets, practices, practitioners, and institutions within a specific region or community. Today's discussion specifically will underscore national data intelligence practices, namely these cultural registries as resources, core resources for national strategies, catalysts and mechanisms for enabling public-private partnerships, and of course, all toward providing tangible benefits to cultural and creative practitioners across the Caribbean region. So real-time examples are going to come from this panel about how data and data optimization enables this approach to improving the status of the artists at social and economic levels through policy, programming, and public-private partnerships. So I want to introduce this panel briefly. Right to my left, I have Ms. Gillian Wilkinson McDaniel, Principal Director of the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Jamaica. Next to Ms. Wilkinson McDaniel, we have Mr. Orlando Romain, Special Envoy and Advisor to the Government of Grenada, and his work is situated in the Ministry of Planning and Economy Development, and he is responsibility for ICT and the creative economy. Mr. Andre Hoyt is joining us today in replacing the CEO of the National Cultural Foundation of Barbados, and Mr. Hoyt is a Senior Business Development Officer. We also have Ms. Daniela Carrington, Cultural Officer 3 in the Division of Culture, the Ministry of Culture and Community Development, Trinidad and Tobago, and Mr. Anderson Bisna, VP of Insurance Operations of Guardian Life of the Caribbean. Welcome to all panelists. I feel like I'm a bit far away, but warm welcome and thank you for taking time to share your different experiences. So I'm going to invite some brief opening statements. Please, all of the panelists from Grenada, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, can you give us a brief opening statement and let us know what organization you represent in terms of your registry mechanisms? What are those mechanisms like? Why do they exist to collect what data? And how long has the registry project been in place or the system been in place in your country? Yes, I'm going to go, I think I'll go in the order that we're fitting in for now. Yes.
So you want me to start? Yes. All right. Thank you very much for that, Nalini. My name, again, is Gillian Wilkinson McDaniel. I am the Principal Director, Entertainment Policy Development and Monitoring in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport in Jamaica. The Jamaican National Registry of Entertainment and Creative Industries Practitioners was actually started in 2014. It's not one of the earlier registries, because I know that Trinidad and Barbados would have started before us, I think. But our registry started in the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment. and then migrated to the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport when there was an administration change. And so the registry covers all the major sectors in Jamaica: music, film, animation, fashion and design, literary and visual arts, I said literary arts already, craft, and cultural communities, so the Maroons and the Taino communities in Jamaica. So it is intended to incentivize and to provide structure and to provide data to the government on all of the practitioners that are resident in Jamaica. Jamaica, we understood very early that we needed to make some very strategic connections with other ministries, departments, and agencies. So, for example, the registry became a platform to undergird the CSME Skills Certificate for Creatives. So persons have to register on the registry. I may be preempting you. Am I? No? Okay. So in these strategic partnerships, we had relationships with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. We had relationships with other ministries, departments, and agencies in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, so that we could actually bring creatives and get information from creatives so that we could have evidence-based policy making. What kind of data do we collect? We collect biographic data, sectors of practice. We also collect data on the demographic data in terms of male-female breakdown. So for example, Jamaica, we currently have about 70% male, 72% actually, and 28% female registrants on the registry. Is that representative of the sector? Those are some of the things that we're trying to parse through in relation to the overall ecosystem of the cultural and creative industries in Jamaica. But one of the most important things for Jamaica is that we include entertainment, because entertainment is one of those areas that is, as I've said, entertainment is a way by which we understand culture and we signify culture in Jamaica. So entertainment practitioners are separate from cultural practitioners and creative practitioners. And so I'll stop there so that because to give the other panelists some opportunity to speak on that.
All right, good morning to my panelists, good morning to the audience. My name is Orlando Romain. I am the advisor, special envoy in the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Creative Economy. My minister is here, so I'm trying to keep my job. Let me firstly, thank the CDB for putting on this important conversation. When we speak about the creative economy and we speak about data, essentially we're speaking about visibility. And that is one of the areas that has long been a challenge for the creative sector in terms of development. Visibility. There is not sufficient data, not just in creative, in most countries on the creative sector. And so it's imperative for any country who is serious about developing the creative sector to first and foremost start to collect data and leverage data to make better decisions. In Grenada, when we started our creative economy thrust in 2022, we formed the Office of Creative Affairs, which is a department specifically focused on investing and developing the creative sector. One of the first projects we did was set up our registry. That was back in 2022. And we did that because we knew the concept of a creative economy was new. And we needed to be able to justify and raise awareness about it. So what we did was host a conference called Unleash, where we brought together all stakeholders, the creators, the bankers, the lawyers, the educators, the policymakers, to discuss the creative economy, and then we launched our registry at that event. So it allowed us to capture quite a few registrations at that particular event. But we designed our registry with reciprocity in mind, because we knew nobody likes to give their data. And so you have to incentivize the creators to provide their data. So our database or our platform has a service delivery mechanism attached to it, where we're able to not only collect data, but we're also able to deliver critical services like applications for concessions, to that platform. So it's one of the mechanisms used to incentivize creators. And also as a communication tool. There's a lot of opportunities that floats around the internet. The creators themselves are busy doing their work and they don't hunt for these opportunities. We collect them and we disseminate them to them. So we have a very active, very healthy database. It's about 1,000 registered creators right now. And that's within the space of 2 to 3 years. I don't think it's fully representative of the creative sector. We're still, as previous speaker said, we're still trying to work through what is the exact representation. But it certainly is a start. And we are actually on version 2 of our creative registries. We had some learning in the beginning. And we're now optimizing that registry for even more civil delivery. But yeah, so I'll pause it.
Excellent, thank you. I can see you all now, because this is a conversation. This sets the tone really well for the contribution from Trinidad and Tobago, because my knowledge is that it's the first registry, cultural registry in the English-speaking Caribbean. So tell us a little about that.
Good morning again. Thank you, CDB and CIIF, for inviting us to be a part of this particular panel and discussion for the symposium. Once again, my name is Daniela Carrington. I'm a cultural officer at the Culture Division, Ministry of Culture and Community Development. I've actually had a very long-standing relationship with the registry. It was established in 2009 as a cabinet-approved program by a government as a way of incentivizing corporate citizens to engage in philanthropy and investment in the arts. But it focused specifically on film sector, performing arts, visual arts, and then later on there were amendments to include fashion. And that was one of the things that when you look at how we're talking about incentivizing support for the creatives and the development of the registry, the fact that research would have gone into knowing that we want to identify particular sectors in which you want to encourage that level of investment. But the registry actually was formally launched in 2011, and it serves as a database to capture all creatives in Trinidad and Tobago, regardless if they're housed within the country, within the Caribbean region, or operating internationally. And it has a formal registration process. We cover individuals, organizations, creative works, as well as festivals. And we would follow a creative and cultural industries rubric in terms of those particular fields of endeavor that, run the gamut. But the thing that is really important is that we also take into consideration the local context. So when you're talking about persons who perform in steel pan, traditional knowledge, things that are more indigenous to the country, we try to represent that. So our fields of endeavor are not limited. We try as much as possible to represent the sector and how it evolves. I would say that the data for the registry has been utilized in a very strategic way, because we would have engaged in a cultural mapping exercise, I think in 2013 or 2014, supported by Dr. Suzanne Burke, who's an expert in cultural policy. And the data from the registry, the persons who were part of the registry at that time, formed as the survey group or focus group in gathering data to kind of get a snapshot of how the creative sector operates, some of the areas for improvement, some of the challenges that are faced in this sector. And so that mapping exercise is deemed as a way to help inform policy development and intervention. So the registry data serve for that particular purpose. Other than that, I would say that our registry has evolved, as I was talking about, in terms of optimization, and our registry database actually had went through various iterations. Most recently, we did an upgrade supported by a Creative Caribbean Play grant as a collaborative project between our performing arts space, the Nabrimo Bowl, and the division, where we were able to do a serious upgrade of the database and website to optimize the data that is going to come out from that, as well as make the whole platform more user-friendly. And the thing about the registry, I've always said, is that it serves as a resource tool. And yes, it would have been established to incentivize corporate support, but over time, you can see within the ministry, as well as private sector individuals, that they can utilize the registry for a lot more.
a lot more beyond the idea of investment in the arts from a corporate standpoint. So I see that there's a lot more in store for our registry as it grows. And I would love to say that what has really been a great thing to see is the support we have with our regional partners. So I remember when the Minister of Culture in Barbados came to us to actually find out about the registry. Representatives from Grenada came as well, representatives from Jamaica and a consultant from Jamaica, because I guess we took that first leap and we said, you know what, we're engaging in information sharing and willing to say what we did good and what we know we can learn from to help support the development of our other registries or our regional partners.
Excellent. And Barbados, tell us about, we're here now, we're in CARIFESTA, the height of CARIFESTA. Tell us about your registry mechanism.
Yes, good morning. My name is Wandra White. I'm the Senior Business Development Officer at the National Culture Foundation. And my department actually manages the registry. I did come to Trinidad in 2015 once we had launched the Culture Industries Development Act to look at some of the pitfalls or some of the benefits that they had experienced. I think at that time we discussed also linking to Australia as well. Yes. Our national registry came out of the Culture Industries Development Act, and it had a specific purpose of being able to bring a lot of our creatives into the formal sector and be able to demonstrate their value, and that's the overall goal of it. So in order to access any of the concessions in the Culture Industries Development Act, whether that's investment, duty-free concessions, VAT waivers, etc., you needed to be registered in the Act. And the Act also had a provision for the Culture Industry Development Fund, which we later established. And so to access anything from the Culture Industry Development Act, you needed to be registered. That process allowed us to capture over 3,000 creatives who had never been captured before. What I would say in terms of our development is that throughout the process, while we started to talk about the orange economy, we hadn't actually looked at the specific sectors. So the traditional sectors were there, festivals, music, film. But during COVID, a really important thing happened. We had to really pivot. And what we saw the growth of were some design sectors that we never thought about. So particularly in cosmetics, which became a very big sector for us and continues to grow. So when we talk about spa and wellness, we've never factored the design of those products into the app. So we then had to make changes for that. We've had two mappings of the culture industries. One is currently being done, but we also use the data from the registry to facilitate that. The registry also allows those who register to also promote themselves. So it has two functions. So you're capturing data from our end, but the artisans and those who registered are also promoting who they are, their products, etc. This is very important, particularly because when we start to measure the benefits of doing a waiver for duties, when we start to measure the over $3 million that we give in grants throughout the year, we're able to look at it from gender, from sector that needs development. So we look at trends to see where we can have that impact. Out of that, we're also ministers leading the charge for us to have our film policy and new act for film as well. So those are some of the benefits of having that registry.
Thank you very much. And you know, anybody who's tuned in on UTV, anyone in the room who's not a member of your National Cultural Registry, this is a call to action. All right, you've heard. And those that are developing cultural industry and creative databases and registries in your own countries, we also hope that this discussion is going to lay the way. You're learning from those who've tried it first. And we're about to go into that part, because it's not about data for data's sake. It's not about collecting data. again, there's value in these mechanisms beyond just capturing that data. It's a start of mapping. The impact really lies in how that data is then analyzed and mobilized toward real action. We could talk as much as we want, we could collect as much data as we want, but where's that data going? What is it telling us? So I actually want to ask too, we've heard the nice bits about these projects. What have been the challenges? And Gillian, you hinted at some of them. What are some real and key challenges that seem to be hindering the sustainability of these registry mechanisms? Updating it, is it that some of them aren't digitized? Let us know.
I would say that data harmonization across the public sector is perhaps one of the major issues. So the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, which has the mandate to abstract and analyze data, is not as and really should be the overarching mechanism and government agency that deals with and actually allows all the ministries, departments, and agencies to use information and to use the data from the various ministries. The Statin has not had a mandate to harmonize data, even though that is in their act. And it means, therefore, that the Ministry of Culture collects data and the Planning Institute of Jamaica collects data, the Bank of Jamaica collects data on creatives, but the harmonization mechanism is not robust. And so there are ways that we need to strengthen our national statistical organizations, and we have the legislation all across CARICOM. But that harmonization, that data harmonization, research shows is one of the major challenges. The other one is, of course, funding and the ability for governments to critically fund this data collection exercise in a way that makes sense. The fact is that data collection is labor intensive, it's human resource intensive. You have to have the statisticians, you have to have all of those persons who are able to analyze the data. Our NSOs regionally are underfunded and are under-resourced. And so you're not able to abstract and analyze the data as we ought to. I would say that I'll start with those two major issues, the challenge of funding, funding at the government level, and funding human resources to actually deal with the data. Because we're getting to the point of big data, this voluminous data, so we're collecting. I remember in this very room several years ago, StatCan saying that they're awash with data. I mean, we can be awash with data here in CARICOM and in the Caribbean as well, but the harmonization of that, how you collect it, what you collect, and how you therefore analyze, I think is one of the, is a really critical issue that we have to address as government.
Thank you. And I'm going to quickly ask Grenada, Trinidad, Barbados in that order, because we're driving home to the point here of optimizing. So I'm coming to you, Anderson. You've been listening from a private sector space, but I want to know as well, Grenada, Trinidad, Barbados, is this a shared challenge? Do you have another layer of challenges? In looking at your demographics, for example, are you missing? How and why are we maybe missing certain parts of the sector in terms of getting them to the table? And I think there's data collection fatigue in the sector.
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, data collection is one of the areas that I think has been a challenge. While we're able to get a lot of demographic data, the data with regards to economic activity is short-term. Out of our probably 1,000 plus registered creatives, about 35% of them have registered businesses or actually registered businesses, but they don't easily provide the economic data, business activities. And you understand that, trust is a factor. So again, what we've done is try to tie a lot of those services that we offer, like concessions, like the Business Development Fund, like training opportunities, towards accuracy of data, and supply of that type of information to us. And it has been working itself. So another area I think is the rural areas of Grenada. We've seen, based on our data, that at least 70% of the registrants of St. George's live in Barbados. And that be one of two reasons: digital literacy, the digital divide, and so even though we have a digital platform, it still requires us to go into the communities and start to collect those data sets for persons who may not be active in the online platform. So capturing the data is still a challenge. We still need to do a lot more work there, and to have a more robust strategy around continuous collection. I would agree that interruptibility is a challenge also. How do we utilize that data across ministries and MDAs? And before we even get to that, how do we standardize the classifications of the various sectors so that the Ministry of Labor, the data matches up with their standardizations from the ILO and so forth? So I would agree with those 2 points: data capture and definitely interruptibility of data is for the challenges there.
I would definitely like to underscore both points by Gillian and Orlando with regards to harmonization, the fact that a lot of data sources exist among different, particularly public sector agencies. So that's why for Trinidad and Tobago, we would have endeavored to establish a national cultural policy. In it was a mechanism, an implementing mechanism where we try to get everyone at the table. The idea that these various agencies have different funding that creatives can access. They have different initiatives or registries or databases where persons can sign up for their particular incentives or programs. And so the idea is to get everyone together to say that, let's try to harmonize, let's try to streamline some of these processes. So that is definitely a challenge. I would say that from particularly interacting with creatives who access our registry, there is challenge when it comes to documenting their own work. Documenting their own work, sourcing the information they need to do our application in the first place. And our application is not an onerous thing, but it's a matter of how do you then attest to you being active in the sector, because that's what we try to advocate to them. It's how do you then provide the proof that we need to know that you're actively engaging in this particular field of endeavor so that you can become registered. So we do see those challenges with the person. So then you're saying these particular creatives who are now going to access our incentives, access the benefits of the registries, can't even start the process because when they're looking around to build a portfolio, they are having a struggle in itself to actually get the information together, or they're not part of formal associations or groups that are recognized in the industry. So we then see a lot of capacity building is probably needed to bring the creators at a level to then access some of the things that are offered through our registries. And that's something that we've tried to do with some of our programs that came out of our national registry, like our Mentoring by the Masters program, where we pair established artists in the sector with up-and-coming creators, and we build a lot of professional development in it so they understand how to document themselves, how to market themselves, how to deal with the legalities of navigating the creative sector, how to deal with their safeguarding their intellectual property. They learn that through the Mentoring Masters program, in addition to skilling up themselves in their particular field. And so we know that that has to kind of go hand in hand in order for them to even become registered to then access some of the benefits. So I know that that's a particular area that we see a challenge. Also, just one little bit, investment, when it comes to the corporate sector, and in terms of the fact that the registry was established for corporate citizens to support those in the industry. Some persons do still find it's a challenge to know who are they going to approach and how do they then access that particular sponsorship mechanism, because legislation in Trinidad was amended under the Corporation Tax Act to establish the Art and Culture Allowance, and some persons are still not aware how to access it from both the corporate side and as a creative. So we know that there's still a lot of information sharing and sensitization that needs to take place, because we did that actively in the first few years with the registry. But we can see that people are still asking questions and saying, I'm always hearing about this, but how do I access it? So we do see that as a challenge. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a question of the value of the data as well, because the value of the data to us, the policymakers and program directors, is very important. But quite oftentimes, the businesses don't actually map that in their minds and what they're doing. So the value of the data doesn't mean anything to them until it needs to be. And that's one of the challenges we find. And because within the industry, the rate of change is so quick, there are things that we would like to implement that it's probably 5 years ago. We're now trying to implement it. So we often have to ensure that our data collection, whatever instruments we're designing to collect the data, is also reflective of where the creatives are, where the businesses are. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we take a data instrument from somewhere else and transplant it into our own system. And that's a lot of the feedback that we get from some of the creatives. This don't make sense to me. How am I relating to this? So we've had to really look at, okay, when we have programs, what are we trying to pull out of here? Are we looking at data in relation to how quickly they go to market? Are we looking at data that speaks to the sort of investment that they will need to carry them into that market? For example, a business who is doing fashion takes literally about 5 years to really be established for customers, production, etc. So are we measuring the rate of that time, the rate of investment in that 5 years? Those are the things that we need to look at in terms of our data collect. Those are the challenges that we found at the moment.
Thank you very much. I'm actually gonna ask Anderson to, share, because we're talking about challenges again. This pretty picture is not enough unless we're actually discussing the hard things and trying to fix them. So you are in the private sector space, in the insurance space. And there's a reason that we are talking, we've invited you to talk about this, and we'll get to that a little later. But before what is currently happening in Jamaica, what has been the biggest challenge from your vantage point in terms of engaging with and delivering insurance products and services at a significant scale? Because this is not to say there isn't, you don't have clients from the sector, but at a large, significant, impactful scale, what have been the challenges in delivering and engaging with this space?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I think historically, we've insured members from the creative sector in small bits, but it has always been a bit reactive. And by being reactive, sometimes some persons are already at a stage where there are illnesses and so forth. And I think by taking this step, especially with the pilot we've done in Jamaica, is being proactive in securing our artists and our members. If it is we are investing regionally in our people to boost tourism, to boost entertainment, we want to ensure that we can protect them as well and secure them in the event of an untimely illness or death, especially them and their families. Their families sacrifice a lot as well for them to be able to do what their skill. And if on our side we could partner to provide those assurances, is where we play a part. Prior to this pilot, it's not new for us to provide these type of services, insurance services, for association and membership type groups. So it's something we've done traditionally. Of course, this is at a larger scale, and as a pan-Caribbean company throughout the Northern Caribbean and the Eastern Caribbean territories, Trinidad and Barbados, it allows us to use the scale to make the offering more attractive.
Yeah, because I was going to follow up and say, what does then moving away from those smaller groupings to, let's say, a registry scale, what does that do for cost, accessibility to the data? You have, more demographics to build the products and services customized, etc. What does that look like? Is this a promising type of engagement?
Yeah, so as with any type of insurance, whether health, life, motor, house, the scale is what would help. And with being proactive and not reactive, it helps in terms of making the packages more attractive, more cost effective as well. And the beauty of it is it's customizable. And that's what makes it attractive throughout the Caribbean. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I'm coming to Jillian. So we are talking around the thing that's happening in Jamaica, but tell us a little bit about the pilot, this group insurance pilot in Jamaica, and into the framework, a general framework, but also I want to know the challenges, right, that you're facing. So what has been working and what is the challenge facing?
I think, first of all, I should say that we have had a sports registry and a sports insurance, athlete insurance program since 2017. So, and that athlete insurance program is Sagicor and Guardian, so it's a mix. But of course, athletes are much easier to insure because they're younger, they're healthier, etc. When we look at the Jamaica Entertainers and Creatives Insurance Plan that was implemented, we started with the life insurance because that was a little bit more manageable in terms of budget. And we have 3,715 persons with who received life and personal accident insurance through Guardian Life. That program, those persons had to be registered, and they were registered on the registry. So that was a basis. So that's, the registry for us is the floor. It is what incentivizes every single thing that we do. And the health insurance, though, primarily because it's so expensive, we had to, the minister, when let me step back a little and tell you a little story. So between 2017 and 2019, we had about 36 creatives who died, and this was pre-COVID. And very often what happens is that those creatives, because of the lack of resources, it's the government that assists with those burials or hospitalization, all of those issues. And so that was a budget cost for us. And the minister for several years said, look here, man, we have to do something about health insurance for the creatives. When we look at what we call the vintage artists in Jamaica, they are the ones who built ska, who built Rocksteady, dub, all of that. And so we must do something. There must be something that we can do. But the cost, healthcare cost, it was prohibitive. And having had a discussion with the then Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark, Dr. Nigel Clark, he said I remember him saying to Minister Grange, why don't you put it in your budget? It couldn't happen that year. And it couldn't happen the year after that. But it started to happen in 2023-24 in that fiscal year. And so really and truly, it's just looking to see how we can incrementally support. Because, I mean, I will tell my other colleagues that it is frightfully expensive. When you talk about 3,000 insurance, 3,000 practitioners, or for Trinidad, I don't know how many you have on your registry database, but for us, we have over 4,500 individuals and 496 companies, creative companies on our registry. And so, and of course that is a drop in the bucket, because music alone is said to have over 6,000 odd practitioners. So funding, being able to actually put it in your budget, and incrementally supporting it is perhaps, I think, the best way. But the major challenge is always whether or not you can afford to do it. It may be that at some point, because right now, what we have is a program, is a basic bronze level program that provides for hospitalization, diagnostic services, maternity, all of the bells and whistles, and it pays 80%. But we can't support your dependents. It has to be only the creative. If you want to have your dependents on that plan, you'll have to pay for it yourself. And so that was a decision that we had to take because of cost. So, yes.
So that I think probably is the biggest challenge in
Yes.
terms of wanting to scale up.
Yeah,
and it's good
absolutely.
advice for this panel and anybody else trying to go in that direction. You might be wondering why we're talking about insurance. Well, we're looking at the holistic support for the creative sector. And you mentioned the pandemic, you mentioned COVID, and the learnings from COVID and from that space. I know some of the registries used the registry information to be able to provide financial support. I think it'll be everybody here, everybody's kind of nodding. And that, for example, is the first start of optimizing this data, all right? But we're in a place too where we're thinking long term. Yes, CIIF, for example, we are a grant and technical assistance program, but beyond our grants, beyond, how are we partnering at public and private levels to really ensure that the status of the artist is safe, that artists can do what they are called to do without having to be worried about economic resilience, survival, and health and related costs, right? So I am actually going to ask Anderson as well, within your portfolio, what are kind of the critical insurance products that you see that the creative sector can benefit from? I know Jamaica is taking advantage of some of them.
Yeah.
And this is the start of a conversation. Your area is one part of the insurance space, but we're not talking yet about touring musicians and equipment and studio and pensions, annuity and pension plans. But tell us from your portfolio, what are some of those critical areas that, for example, a registry can work with insurance, private investors, etc., to provide?
Yeah, and I think Jillian sort of started off by Jamaica took the lead and they selected some of the major benefits in terms of life coverage and health. And while it is the health is for the creatives only and not their family, in terms of untimely death, that life benefit provides that comfort level for families. But I think throughout the region as well, and we've done research on this, a lot of persons wait too late for retirement planning. And that's something that we need to bring that awareness regionally to our members, so that they can plan for that future in terms of having those who want a set retirement age and so forth. Another side of it is actually utilizing the benefits that you have. So for example, within the health side of it, it's also being proactive, where we have benefits built in those plans to do annual screenings, that in the event that there's an illness or diagnosis is detected at an early stage. So we do that type of awareness with our members as well, through partnering with providers in each of the territories to make it as easy for persons to access those benefits.
The truth is that many of our governments, we have other programs throughout government that will assist creatives. So with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, for example, there is a funeral grant. You may have the social pension program in Jamaica. We also have the National Health Fund. So what we do with our JCIP program is to actually triangulate all of those services. And we bring the creatives into the fold and to let them understand that the government benefits are there for them. So whether it is the social pension program for those persons, those creatives who are over 75 years old and therefore can't access some of the other benefits, whether it is the National Health Fund and getting prescription drugs, all of those things. So we're telling them about every single thing that that is possible within the government space that they are not and have not been accessing. So it's important to let our creatives know that they are a part of the economy, because I think sometimes we have this sense that as creatives that you're outside of the economy, when in fact all of those other benefits are not just there for civil servants, it's there for everyone. So just to say that.
Great. What I'm seeing, Daniela, but what I'm hearing across the board is a need for advocacy, awareness, like real targeted campaigns across the region to let creatives know, please join our registry. These are other things that you benefit from. I can say as well from a CIIF standpoint at the Caribbean Development Bank, again, when we're designing programs, when we are also asking for applications for grants, it helps, and we have a vision that at some point the entire region will have functional cultural databases, so that is in itself a checkpoint. So again, that data collection and that data fatigue, we are not asking, and I think we have the Caribbean Culture Fund here in the audience. We don't need to then come back and ask the same 10 questions and they have to repeat it for the funds. We are looking at a harmonized system of information and information sharing, and similarly using your registries as a pipeline for our information as well to move through. Daniela.
Yeah, I'm itching to say, to leading off of that point is our regional artist registry. There was, I'm hoping, still a thrust amongst CARICOM to establish a regional artist registry, because that was part of the reasoning behind establishing the National Registry of Artists and Cultural Workers in Trinidad and Tobago. The idea is to connect all these registries across the Caribbean, so that way it becomes, it's just data access points, you know? And we had a former director of culture who had a vision for the registry to be that it's not only, for us, we only register nationals, and I guess across our different registry, we only register nationals or register entities from our country. But who is to say that, I can't come to Jamaica and register, or I can't, come to Grenada and register through our registry and still be recognized across the different systems, so that is a possibility, and that's where we can utilize those registries to serve that purpose. But then I also wanted to kind of go off of Jillian's point and say that on top of the issue with looking how you look at creatives and that level of advocacy and sensitization, is because if the creative is still looked at as a liability, that is something that is a major shift that we need to have in our sector, because they are operating in the gig economy. They operate out of traditional hours, and the kind of income they generate is not at the level, or it may not be in a way that is structured and standardized to say that a person who is a registered accountant, so that they can then access those benefits. So I believe that once we start to really and truly get persons within the creative sector, within the private sector, to really look at the creatives as just another person that you are providing support for, that would be great. And then to let the creators build their confidence in knowing that, yes, you can access. So yes, aside from what is traditionally offered in everybody's country with regards to pensions, access to funeral grants and stuff like that, is to know that, no, you can learn how to take care of yourself, to build your work, and access the regular services that anybody else in any other sector can access. So it's how do you build that confidence for them to know that there are things that they can get to take advantage of.
And thank you for raising that. That was actually my next prompt about a kind of Caribbean-wide harmonization. And so we're kind of coming down to the end of the discussion, but I want to ask closing points. I want to ask Orlando, Mr. Romain, I would like you to say, what is the vision for Grenada's registry projects in light of all we've been talking about? And, what is the one takeaway that you want everybody to leave with?
Yeah. All right. I just want to, before I answer the question, just support the point that was made previously. in the need for regional harmonization. And I made that point because I've been in discussion with the OECS regarding lobbying for more Caribbean countries, particularly OECS countries, to be part of Google's and YouTube's YYP program. We have a lot of content creators and they can't monetize their content right now. And the argument by YouTube and Google is that the data, the market size is too small, and they don't have enough data, right? And probably they're just looking at the persons who live physically within the Caribbean. What about our diaspora, all right? And so that's where data and regionally aggregated data becomes vital in building those arguments so that we can open up opportunities for our creators. But in terms of where Grenada is going, we really want data to be the center of our decision-making process, all right? Not just collecting data, but leveraging data and making data make sense in everything that we do. An example is, so music is one of our top sectors. It's I think, accounts for 35% of the database. And we use that data to decide, you know what, last year we're going to invest a lot in the music sector. And so we launched a lot of master classes for producers and did a lot of programs. We actually renovated about 13 music production studios across the island. And we actually saw the results this year in Spice Mass. I don't know if anybody was looking at online, but Spice Mass was trending. And a lot of the artists came back and said, listen, what you guys did with the musician this year made a serious impact. All right, we brought in Philip from Trinidad, who did a master class with our producers and our recording artists, and it was impactful. And so it's a practical, you know, example of looking at the data and not admiring it, but acting upon it. All right. So again, for us is really continue to collect data, continue to enrich the data, continue to use the data to drive service delivery for the creators. All right. Because a lot of countries are trying to digitize their government. Right, and so let's not leave the creative sector out of that digitization process. And really just to have a robust creative sector that is economically viable and driven by data. Yeah.
Thank you. And so quick shots again, Trinidad, Barbados, and then I'm actually going to ask about the private sector vision as well. And then Gillian will close with your, vision. Daniel, yeah.
I would say that for our registry, coming off of doing an upgrade to our database, which actually was the second iteration of that upgrade, is getting more nuanced, disaggregated data that can then maximize or leverage, as the buzzword here being used, on ways in which you can optimize and create more projects and programs and help properly inform policy development. So that is something that we do envision for the registry, particularly coming off of what Jamaica was able to establish. That is something that we are very much keenly interested in, because we really want to find different ways in which we can continue to support creatives in the sector. And I think that the one thing though that I still keep seeing is, or wanting to see, is that level of integration amongst the different databases. As you mentioned, Casey Phillips and Precision Productions, they're part of our registry. So the idea is that can we not, if we know we want to engage service providers, facilitators and stuff, tapping into our respective registries to have that level of cross collaboration and work happening, because I'm of the belief that we don't only want to encourage persons to access our registry and use our registries. We want to show that we're actively utilizing it ourselves and engaging in it, knowing that we're supporting our creators by not only from them being registered, but knowing that we can give them opportunities as well.
I love that. Andre?
The reality is that creativity is a risk. And we really have to understand that in the entire value chain of what we're doing. Right now, we're taking creatives to global platforms. So one of the key things that they're asking for every product is, do you have insurance for this product? So that's something we have to think about, not just the health and all the other aspects, how the insurance that's required for products as they travel. I think we were able to demonstrate just before COVID and into COVID, how the data forced the banks to create the ePay system that our creatives were able to trade with. And that was a big task for us, but we got it done. So we know that the data helps to support that. And there are a lot of agencies in Barbados who are also using that data, but having that data in the notion of data as part of your ecosystem as a business. Don't just see yourself as a creative, you have to see yourself as a business. If you're attracting investment, you need to put that data in that whole value chain. And it has to be efficient and relevant, and I think that's the opportunity for those persons who actually sell the service of data and M&E. You have to see creatives as businesses, and you can offer that service to them. The more we have of that, even from accountants, lawyers, etc., the more you see that as a business, the data then could really come through. We could really see things that are beneficial and have that, what I call the green light, switching on, but moving us from just seeing ourselves as the government has to invest in you, the government has to support you, but even though you are doing really hard work to get your products out, maybe that can help to encourage more investment from investors.
Thank you. And we said a lot about insurance and private. What is the vision? You haven't heard all of this and seeing the vision going beyond this conversation. What is promising? What is, looking forward?
Yeah, I think it's, and while across all insurers, the products are unique, what we have been doing is investing heavily on technology to make the process as simple and easy for our partners. And that is partnering with providers, whether it's locally, regionally, or internationally, because we know the creatives and the industry, what it requires, and the travel and so forth. So we've been looking and promoting and enhancing our value-added services, which complements the specific benefits to make the package as attractive and simple as possible.
Excellent, thank you. And Gillian?
All right, so I think I want to go back to one of the challenges that I mentioned earlier, which is data harmonization. So big vision is at the national level that the statistical organization actually harmonizes the data in a way that makes perfect sense and allows the ministries, departments, and agencies to collect the data that they need so that we can provide all of these wonderful, just like the UK DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, where they can tell you that culture is worth, every minute they make 100 billion pounds or something like that. The point is that when the National Statistical Organization is the one that's doing that, you're able to do that because you're looking at all the ministries, departments, and agencies. And so for our vision, I'd want us to have that happening at the regional level and certainly at the national level, and also bringing in the human resources from the University of the West Indies, University of Technology, all of our institutions where you have our, you see I've been thinking about this, right? Where you have all of our statisticians, our analysts, our researchers coming together with your national statistical organizations, not at the ministry levels, because the ministry is micro. It's at the national level. The Bank of Jamaica, the Bank of Barbados, all of us coming together and getting information on the creative sectors so that we can move forward.
Thank you, and that is a perfect call to action. As we close, I want to thank the panelists, all of you, for your contributions, your vision. I'm making notes, we're taking notes on these visions to see again where the best design support and mechanisms really should be. This really has been a timely and encouraging discussion. I really hope that this has served as evidence of where the region can continue to target and be strategic in data collection at national levels, and we're looking toward the regional level. In closing, I am happy to share actually that at CIIF, we are focusing and forefronting data intelligence and data optimization strategies through our grant programs in the coming months. And we had done some preliminary research on national registries. And actually, in our 19 borough member countries, only about 50% have functional formal registries. And so in response to that, we are soon launching a call that is actually going to ask for a digital customizable template for registries from all of the learnings of those that have gone first. That will then be able to be piloted and spread across the region, and kind of cost-saving, resource collaboration. And so we will be probably coming to you all again to get some of those learnings and encouragement. And that is valued at USD 150,000. It's a start, and we're looking for partners as well. And we will also be following up too on the Jamaica pilot and trying to figure out again to how the region can build upon what you have started, right? So the stage is set for even more discussion today about data, optimization of data. We are banking on this sector. Thank you again. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Melanie and panelists. And now I'm going to turn your attention to the screen. We are going to see one of the recipients from the CIIF grant program, and I'm going to let Melanie give me a brief introduction to it before we show the video.
Thank you, Donna. So I've been talking about sustainability, our pillars at CIIF, at the Cultural and Creative Industries Innovation Fund. Our operational pillars are innovation, sustainability, and collaboration. So you see that through all the work, through all of our grants. And now we have a chance to actually see one of the impacts of those grants that has built that into the ethos, into the frameworks of that community project. In one community in southern Belize, a Maya community, the Sheyel fashion line, the development of that project that has engaged women in the community as leaders of tradition, reviving heritage preservation efforts through embroidery. You'll see a little bit about that impact and hear directly from them on that.
Amula kele ochil kinkana lika chuyero de antes tit sobento like 10 años en wal kinkana achoy menina solecto nado ay wir asotak oralim Así ya ni gusta achoy neka be harta kabato corazón choy.
The heart, it represents that we should have that love for everybody around us.
It represents our culture.
Itili kuye tuye maken culture because Maya ho ontawich.
My mom, she's Mopan. My grandmother, she's Mopan as well. And when we used to go spend summer in San Antonio, we're on the farm, and after chores are done, you finish helping with the chickens and everything. It's afternoon, you sit there and you're sewing.
Nikabew alaki madiki sahti yaktiyanti chuyu. So ak planin nanti men so betika tilik ildia kato tibetana tulaka tipo tulakal potaza tika habo konti meya tulakal timis tulakal katon tila konton ti chuipas.
We just get together and sit down, and then we talk, we laugh, and then our embroidery is going. So I love that experience that I have with my family.
Bicho mas pompoí que o CIE bilin tu para quem vem met octin CIE.
In working with our communities, there really was a lack of representation from the women. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way to assist. And from there, we came with CIIF, you know, what would promote Shokbil Chui, revitalize the practice, make people use it, wear it more, and also provide economic opportunities for these women.
Inenen nak silen ali to yani tulik inene. Saya hadik lik lek wala hits ti kwenta ti mak ka ken ti chuyo. Etela meya hatin betik etelo asya ili. Ingyap ko inkena ichili. Wala kin anti kin bahi etelo in familia. Not bikit ti anti bika yanti kin ati habalin wele yanin tak inti hunali nene.
Not everybody or every woman, my woman, knows how to do the embroidery. And, you know, by doing this, it's becoming like a demand. And now I think we will have younger my woman interested in learning how to embroider and also to help them make an income in the home as well.
CIIF is the first brand that is created by Mayan people. This is us, and this is us telling our story through our brand.
Mak ko chide kutubul ti culture akle kada ti culture asu yor hil ti kimil mayam akati bete.
For giving that your attention. And we see the hard work and the labor of love that goes into the creative process. But what we want that persons who are using it for income generation, it is profitable, especially so on a sustainable level. Now I'm going to turn the discussion over to policy. So now we have data, and policy should be evidence-based. Policy should be driven by consultations. And when we say evidence-based, we have been really efficient at providing qualitative data. But what we are required now to produce is quantitative data, but we still need the narrative to support that data. We still need to consult beyond just having discussions. What does this mean in numerical terms? When we collect data, what is it going to be used for? And that was the kind of discussion that we had just now that teased that out. But then how then does that inform policy? Because we know policy is going to inform programming, it's going to inform how funding is allocated, which things are going to be spotlighted and which things will be eclipsed. And therefore, we're going to look at, from the perspective of UNESCO, global policy. What are some of the overarching policies that are going to have an impact at the national level? And then vice versa, how the Caribbean has had an impact into these discussions, particularly when we talk about the culture and creative industries, but also other issues that are very burning and of importance to the region, issues of social justice, when we are speaking about reparations and repatriation of our heritage. So therefore, we're going to get a a presentation now from Mr. Yuri Provesh. He's going to be speaking to us about Mondiacult, the World Cultural Policy. And we're going to learn what is happening at the global level. And that will be followed by a presentation by me. I'll be looking at national cultural policies. What are we doing with the data? What can be done with the data? And what does the consultation process look like when we are considering cultural policies within the 21st century? Mr. Peerage, you have the table.
Hello, pleasant morning, dear colleagues, friends. Glad to see many familiar faces that we are working through the years and achieving sustainable results. Well, truly my presentation, I'll try, of course, to be short, but my presentation aimed to encourage you and some of your, as you are representing also here the delegations and your ministries responsible for culture, to participate in the Mondiacult Global World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development in Barcelona, and it's already like a few weeks prior to 29th, 30th September, and 1st October, 3 days. Oh yes, the clicker is here. Okay. All right. Well, Mondiacult is a global. Let me click. Yes. It's a global, really ministerial level conference that is looking to the culture from the perspective of development. It's a continuous dialogue on cultural policies, of course. And we are looking to culture through as an essential driver of transformation, cohesion, and development. And the goal of the past Mondiacult conference that was conducted in 2022 in Mexico, and this one forthcoming in Barcelona, is actually to put culture on the global agenda as a standing along sustainable development goal beyond 2030 development agenda. There are several high-level meetings, G20, G7, the COPs that were conducted, that recognize culture as a driver of sustainable development. And the Pact for the Future that was elaborated and declared in September last year also recognized culture as a key driver of inclusive, peaceful, just, and sustainable development. So, with those achievements, we are really well set for the Mondiacult 2025 to discuss this thematic. What we are expecting from Mondiacult 2025? Well, first of all, it's a reflection on the declaration of Mondiacult 2022, So there was a declaration that accepted by relevant ministries and countries, and we are reflecting, how in this 3 years, we are achieving the what was declared. So the 2025 Mondial Cult will be in Barcelona, as I said. We are expecting about 2,000 participants, well, from member states, which is now 194, and associate members, and also non-state members of UNESCO and NGOs that are dealing with culture and development, and individual practitioners and so on. So the Mondial Cult 2025 will be around the 6 priority domains. I will show them, and 2 focus areas. So we move on. So the priority domains remains the same as for 2022. It's cultural rights, digital technologies and culture and education, economy of culture, culture and climate action, culture and heritage, and crisis. Though focus areas, we concentrate at this time on 2: culture and peace, culture that includes cultural rights, artificial intelligence and culture. Prior to, as a follow-up to Mondial Cult 2022, and prior to this meeting, we conducted surveys, and I'm quite sure some of you participated in them, on the public and private sector levels. So there were questions asked, and then we moved to the these are the results, some of the results that I pitched for artist survey. So we have about 90+% of artists that are supporting culture as standalone goal in the future development goals. The regional consultations were conducted, and in the 6 geographical areas, we are part of Latin America and the Caribbean, and that consultation was chaired by Chile, and we did it at the beginning of December last year. Some of the results of that consultation, of course, as you can see the statistics, it was quite representative. We have discussed the indigenous people and people of African descent right-based policies, also artistic freedom and labor protection, the linguistic diversity, culture and arts education, the creative economy, and also the provisions of tax support, culture tourism, and climate risk that is threatened heritage. On the overall regional reflection of the overall 6 regional consultations will bring us to this long list. But basically, it's the takeaway on this is that yes, we truly looking forward to the to follow up on the declaration of 2022, Mondial Cult 2022, and those are provisions that are still valid at this time. All right. Well, after regional consultations, we are moving towards the Mondial Cult, and let me announce already that UNESCO is going to launch the global report on cultural policies during Mondial Cult, and the data, as we speak about data, from your countries that you submitted in your quadrennial periodic reports under the 2005 Convention will certainly be included. I can say that we received report from the Caribbean, particularly from Jamaica, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, Barbados. So yes, that data is actually forming the provisions of the global report. Another milestone, and as we speak about data, will be presentation of the new cultural indicator frameworks that is developed by the UNESCO Institute of Statistics. When we speak about statistics in culture, the document that UNESCO is operating with is kind of outdated. It's a 2009 Framework for Cultural Statistics. So it's a pure statistician's instrument, right? So now we are speaking about not only quantity, but also about qualitative indicators. This is something to be presented during Mondial, but we are already foreseeing the workshops and trainings on that framework. And one of them is to be conducted in Jamaica at the end of October, and that will be statistics on cultural heritage. So prior to that meeting, you know, you will receive invitations. I mean, your ministries will receive invitations, basically inviting a rep to join that meeting. All right, we can skip this. What is important also, youth participation. UNESCO is trying to involve youth to all of our global meetings, and this one is also going to be on the youth strategy. We are, of course, want to hear the youth voices in global conversations, and we are providing space for youth to talk and empowering young people with within the cultural policy. There's a digital library. I don't know if countries contributed, but there was a call for contributions. So all of your cultural policies and data should have been exposed there. All right, so the outcome document is planned to be released on 4th of September through the meetings of chairs and consultations with member states. So that's what we are looking for, the outcome document on Mondial 2025. The agenda structure is quite straightforward. I would just like to mention that there will be side events and exhibitions, spaces for NGO use and private sector also to expose, and the civil society forum organized by Spain prior to Mondial. During the sessions, we will combine some of the thematic areas. I mean, we mentioned 6 of them, but here you see how it's structured. So culture and education, culture and peace, culture and climate action, culture, heritage and crisis, cultural rights, economy of culture, and digital technologies and artificial intelligence. So we are looking forward for your active participation, for your participation of your ministers in Mondial 2025. And of course, as the guidance suggests, you will need to choose one of the areas to enable your full participation. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peshkov. And I reflect on one of the statements that we saw. Imagine a world without culture, without artists, without creatives. That's like a world without Caribbean people. just the way we interact. And I was thinking about that, thinking about our dialogue, thinking about the way we are as a people and how we engage with each other. Just the very nature of Caribbean people, the expressions that we use. Brought to mind is I heard someone insulting their neighbor once and say, I don't care about her, she's a termite. And that told the character one time. Caribbean people have a way, you know when you get to Barbados, you know when you land in Jamaica. You know, David, I knew I was in Jamaica when someone greeted me with green lipstick. And I said, yes, my sister, because I have the green shoes. Caribbean people are vibrant, we are expressive. This is who we are. And then if we're thinking about culture of peace and what Mondial Cult is trying to achieve, we must make sure that our voices are there. Where's the voice of the global south? And I know when we think about these global meetings, the first thing that comes to our mind will be our budgets, the cost, the expense. But the issue comes when you are not at the table, then your voice is not heard and then you're not represented. But it's important that we are there, especially if we are talking about a culture of peace. A culture of peace also requires a culture of social justice, which means there's a call for reparations, repatriation of our heritage that's in museums that are foreign to us and that our people do not always have access to. So I think when we think about Mondial Cult, we've heard the plug from UNESCO encouraging the ministers of culture for the Caribbean to attend the session, to be present in it. We were present in some of the regional discussions with Latin America and the Caribbean, but we also need to create a space where we make sure that our voice is embedded in the final declaration. So thank you, Yuri. And now I am the one that's standing between us and our lunch break. So I'll try to keep my presentation succinct. I have had strict orders from my program administrator. She tries to keep me in line. It doesn't work, but I always applaud her efforts. But I am going to now get in and delve into national cultural policy. So Yuri spoke about what's happening at the global level, that we'll be looking at the impact of digital technologies, and we are focusing on culture as a effective tool for sustainable development. We're also looking at the creativity of humanity and all the things that are going to be focused on culture and diplomacy, and the importance of cultural cooperation and cultural diplomacy. But now I'm going to look at how we are looking at culture policy at the national level. How do these things drill down to the everyday work that policymakers have to do and the impact that has on creatives? But I'm going to tie that in with the first discussion that we had from the Caribbean Development Bank on data, right? Data-driven culture policies, and we're going to get into that now. Before I proceed any further, I acknowledge the presence of the president of the Caribbean Development Bank, Mr. Daniel Best. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the funding that your CIIF program does, the excellent program. We saw the work from Belize. And we know that you've continued to pledge your support, particularly building out the region's orange economy, and we're grateful for this because we do need more private financing. And as the discussion brought up today, we don't have unimaginable amount of funding in public finance, and we therefore need to make sure we are well positioned to attract private investors to the sector. So, Hannah, I am going to try to honor your call to be succinct. So the first thing with the cultural policy, if we're looking at it at the national level, we try to look at it from Barbados' perspective, looking at what's happening with Mondial Cult, looking at the needs of our creators through consultation. And one of the things I'll say is you cannot do cultural policy from a desk. A lot of it is research-based, but you cannot serve a constituency that you do not have a relationship with, who do not know you, who you don't have an understanding of the realities and the things that impact them, right? But you can't get everywhere. Ironically, on 166 square miles, I know some people have difficulty finding us on the map, but you can't get to everywhere. You cannot meet every creative. You cannot be in every place. But you need to collect the data, and we need to move beyond qualitative to quantitative data, right? Because we need to know the demographics of the sector, and we set ourselves that task as well, that we wanted to focus on evidence-based policy making to make sure it speaks to the realities and looks to the future as well. And therefore, we wanted to know everything. We got funding from UNESCO under the International Fund for Cultural Diversity to do mapping. And we got a generous amount of funding. The maximum is 100,000 US. 100,000 US does not even begin to map the cultural and creative industries in Barbados. Right? It is an extensive, expensive, but necessary process. We wanted to know everything. We wanted to know how many persons are in the creative sector. We had to use the registry. But we also were cognizant of the fact that everyone does not go to the registry. Right? And then how then do we get the registries to be more robust to attract all creatives to participate in it? But we do know we had a good number from the registry to give us an idea of the sample size, and then we went beyond that. We went to the associations. You can't do culture policy from a desk, but we do know the size of the Ministry of Culture. We do know the size of the research officers. So when you start from the Ministry of Culture, and then you get to the administrators, then you get to the program officers, and then you get to the research team, you're just dealing with 2 or 3 persons. Right? Those are the realities of the Caribbean, the structure of Caribbean public services. However, what we decided to do was to work strategically with our associations, our cultural associations. And particularly we worked with the umbrella body, the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries, because not only do they have their own registries and their own data sets, but associations can work and get further into their membership than we can. And we still needed to have the process of building rapport, getting to know persons and being present. Like I said, we can't be everywhere, but we made sure that we build relationships with associations. The problem comes when associations are not functioning effectively, and that they themselves need to have better programming. They need to be able to have a more attractive incentives for their constituents. We also recognize in terms of insurance, some associations had questions of that nature, and their persons were saying, well, we thought that this is what the association was going to offer. There are lots of things we learned, and therefore we decided from the research that we need to increase the capacity of associations to function, because we can't be everywhere. But if we can increase subventions to associations to do some of the same training and programming, because we can't run all programs. Government is not in the position, even if we thought we wanted to try, it would not be sustainable and it would not be effective. And therefore we need to have cultural and creative associations that can effectively not just do our agenda, that's not how we want to do it, but meet the needs of their constituents so that we can have greater impact. And that's what I'm saying when I say you can't do culture policy at your desk, right? It's not feasible to be on the road every day. I don't know any generous permanent secretaries. I'm looking at a permanent secretary for youth. I don't know any generous permanent secretaries that will allow me to be on the road every day. But nevertheless, we need to be more strategic in how we approach the sector and how we get information. And therefore, when you move from the desk to building those relationships with associations, with organizations and institutions that represent the creative sector. The next thing that we are looking at is that you're going to have to consult without conflict. We found sometimes that when you're engaging with the creative sector, the issues are great, but we still cannot be confrontational or combative in how we approach them. You have to deal with the issues. We have to deal with the digital technologies. I see our colleague from Grenada spoke about our inability to earn from some of the platforms. We know for us, YouTube, we are trying to deal with the geo-blocking and those things of that nature, but we still need to have the conversation. We still need to consult on it. We still need to get into the difficult issues and understand that it is not that and when I say we, I'm talking predominantly about policymakers and technocrats, that when we go, and those persons who manage associations at the administrative level, we cannot go in being offended if persons point out our inefficiencies. They are real and we know they are real. What we want is a partnership and a relationship that is effective. It doesn't mean that it gets beautiful at the first time. It doesn't mean that at different points they wouldn't have conflicts, right? I was going to say we could treat the relationship like marriage, but that might get contentious. So what I would say is that you want to treat it we want to treat it like your best friend. It's not everything that you agree with, But I see best friend is contentious because we are not creating friendships, because familiarity creates problems, because it means then that you begin to service people who you get on well with. But we want to make sure that the partnership has a level of strength. I know, Stephen, I'm digging myself in a hole. We want to have relationships that have a quality of strength, that we can have effective conversations without leaving the space feeling insulted. We have to have these difficult conversations, and a lot of these things came up. I'll give you an example of one that we had very recently. We were explaining and we were talking about trading creative goods and services, and one of the things that came up is someone said, quite frankly, well, it's very good that you're telling us about the other markets and you're letting us know what are some of the bilateral cultural cooperation agreements you've signed. This is beautiful, but I don't have space in my own market, and you're trying to get me into someone else's own. We had to have that conversation. We really had to. And it meant we had to speak about the international agreements we are part of, the regional agreements, speak to the things we can and cannot do. But it was a frank conversation where we had to understand persons saying, look, I can't even get access in my own market. How are we addressing that first? How are we going to deal with that? And these conversations become difficult because sometimes you're not at the level where you can make the necessary change, but the partnership with other associations can create that. And we're going to get into that in the next few slides, and I'll explain it better. So the next thing that we're going to talk about here is embedding culture in national development plans and the national development growth strategy. So we now have the Barbados 2035 plan. It's a robust plan. And we've been working closely with our colleagues in mission control because we recognize that culture is in every sector, and I'm going to have a slide on that, where therefore we do look at culture as a way of life, culture as an expression of a people, but then culture in terms of a source of economic income. Okay. And therefore, culture falls into many different spheres. And therefore, when we are working out the National Development Plan, we look at the impact culture can have positively or how culture can constrain. Good example, culture can facilitate how we respond to disasters and how disaster resilience, what that looks like, and what disaster recovery looks like. Our culture can hinder it, right? And I know for Caribbean people, you know, God is Caribbean, right? God is a Bajan, God is Jamaican, and we pray, you know, the hurricane will go somewhere else and die in the sea, etc. And there goes the electricity, so you don't have any batteries, and there goes all the meat that you bought because they told you that hurricane is coming, so you went and get chicken, especially chicken wings. But culture can affect how you see a disaster, but culture can also affect how you respond to it, right? So for a good example will be, again, to the top of my head, we have regrowing cuscus grass here in Barbados, and it has deep roots. So cuscus grass, the type of grass is a sweet grass. We used to use it for perfumes, but cuscus grass can hold soil and stop soil erosion. But remember when we got all fancy in the 80s and the 90s, and we decided that we didn't like to see grass at the edge of the road because, you know, tourism is the thing, and we also wanted to play our part and have these concrete edges and borders across the road because it was so like a boulevard. And we were going to look really amazing. And then the rain came and all the soil washed into the road and the road became impassable and all of this, and right. Then we decided to, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, it went back to knowledge bearers, older persons within the communities, to speak about how did you deal with heavy rainfall, how do you deal with those things, and then they spoke about the cuscus grass, regrowing it, etc. Heritage-based climate action can also positively impact disaster preparedness. And then again, how we approach resilience. Our culture has made us really resilient. Let me tell you the beauty about Caribbean people. To still be present today, we are made of something strong. We have the culture champions, because it's not that persons were whipped and beaten. No. Okay. Someone legislate your demise. Someone legislated your demise and then psychologically worked on it so that you begin to look in the mirror and hate yourself. It's not enough to beat you, but then it was legislated, but still we are here, right? So when we talk about reparations, I say, yes, I understand the oppressive nature, but I want us to also let our young people know we have the spirit of championship. Caribbean people survive recessions. Caribbean people survive hurricanes. Caribbean people survive. I don't even know if we really understand the concept of depression. I think this is where some of the issues with mental health, where they had to say, listen, you need to actually take time out for yourself. Because we just say, listen, tomorrow we're going to come back and get on with it. But the point is we have a spirit of resilience. How then do we use our culture in national development planning to work for us? It's not always the economics of culture, but also culture as the way of life, how that impacts. So we also explore that. Then the next thing we focused on was that not everybody have to look like you, even though you have a beautiful face. We actually decided, and also looking at what they did in Mondial, to expand the stakeholder grouping that we considered stakeholders for the cultural sector. We got involved with, that's how we started partnerships with CDB. We started partnerships with the Central Bank of Barbados. I mean, the Stats Division, they've had enough of us right now, Hannah, right? We work closely with them. We work with finance. We work with agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture. We work with the Ministry of Health. We decided that if we are embedding culture in national development, we are going to flip things over, and then we are going to look at how can culture help other sectors achieve their objectives. How can we get our creatives to help you? How are the things that we are doing help you to achieve your objectives? Because it's not only necessarily to achieve our own. We will get greater impact through partnerships, but no one is going to come along with us if they think that what we're doing is additional work for them. But we want to show people how we can get them to work with us to achieve their objectives in whatever sector we are in. And therefore, we broaden our grouping of stakeholders. The military works with us. We've done so much training with them to identify cultural assets. Again, disaster risk management. When we were thinking of disaster risk management, we were thinking a lot about our heritage buildings, our manuscripts, our documents, and working with the Barbados Defense Force and the Barbados Police Service and the Barbados Fire Service. One of the things is we also came to understand that every time you have a major gathering, even like today, and there are electricals, and there's a human element, you should have a strong plan in place in terms of if a disaster occurs, right? We have so much wires going around here that anything is possible. And therefore, we work closer with them. We did more training with them. And therefore, when they came and they spoke to us and said, we love this training, can we work with our trainees to identify what are our cultural assets, what are our heritage assets, new partners that you bring on board. And these are not people we would have normally conceptualized as being key players for us as it relates to a stakeholder in the creative economy. And therefore, with building out our new culture policy, we decided to increase the number of stakeholders that we were working with. So not everybody has to look like you, right? Even though you have a beautiful face. We can now work with other persons because we learn from other sectors. And then, because culture, we come to take over. We embed ourselves in your sector, that you don't know how you used to function without us. Because it helps us achieve our goals, and it helps you achieve your goals, and then it helps us achieve the national goals. And this is what we are always focusing in terms of culture. What are we doing that helps us nationally? Because when we have creatives who are profitable, not just earning an income, not just getting revenue, because you can have revenue, but you could be making a loss. So the thing is, we need it profitable, so persons then invest into the economy, and then we have growth. Growth, and to be honest, growth away from government too. So we see people that they can have jobs outside of having to think that the reliance is only on the public sector, but that we can then create new businesses for ourselves that sustain pandemic, that go beyond pandemics, that go beyond, I see my colleague here from tourism, that goes beyond tourism, because culture can help us to maximize our tourism product, diversify our tourism product, and diversify away from our tourism product. We still keep jobs in the tourism sector. And then we looked at culture being transversal, and I spoke about this briefly, so I'm not going to labor on too much. But one of the things, as I said, we also decided to see how culture is in every sector. So I'll give an example with education. We looked at education, but culture as a tool for pedagogy. A a lot of what we teach our children is really abstract. So we had some interaction with a colleague from University of York, and he was doing a program. And these young black inner city children of West Indian descent, they were convinced that they did not know mathematics, right? They were not good. I'm not good at math. So they had an NFL player there. And they said, we all like football? Oh, of course we like football. They said, you know him? I know him. And they said, but what about your friend? Does he play football? I could beat him after he passed the 30-yard dash. I said, oh, you know that. So he then went into, oh, he's only 170 pounds and his speed is, he said, oh, okay, I thought you didn't know mathematics. Time versus distance versus speed. So then we decided, well, can we do that with our traditional sports? You do that with cricket. We do that with Barbadian road tennis. And then the math becomes practical. It moves from abstract to practical. Culture is a form of pedagogy. Culture can teach discipline. We have all seen it with children who've been involved in the drumming corps. They became more disciplined. They were on time. They have more respect for others, because then those children were the ones who were identified as difficult. So then we told teachers, you have a resistance to embedding culture because you see the arts program as an additional input, but it can help you achieve your curriculum objectives if you utilize creatives to help you get some of your core curriculum things done. Culture can help you do that and do it effectively. Culture can help you with fractions. I mean, everyone in here with the music, you keep dividing then quavers and crotchets. I don't know where you end up. But the point is that you know the 4 beats, and you know, and you think it's so difficult, but you get there in the end. I mean, it's evident that I didn't pay much attention to my grandmother, but I did learn how to play the piano, basically. But the point is that there are skills that are transferable, that we can use. A drummer could tell you about physics, could tell you about sound. It was very amazing when our audiovisual personnel explained to us when we were looking at a new facility that, you know, all this metal, and when the sound hit it, do you know how it's going to vibrate and verbiate, and then we're not going to be able, I was like, wow. We don't do applied sciences, but culture can help you do that effectively, and therefore culture is in every sector. Culture is also in health and well-being. We were also looking at culture and crime prevention. We do know that young people who are engaged in activities between, go back, let's go culture and mathematics. We all know those who are the unofficial pharmacists. They say they're not good at mathematics, they drop out of school, they weren't doing good. And then you see a scenario, I saw a scenario that left my mind. I was like, well, all y'all just want arresting. Because they say, man, the man is a thief. I said, oh, I need to get what I can to buy and go. Right? But they're outside the shop arguing, man is a thief. So what's the matter? Man, this ain't an ounce, man, this here is more like 6 grams. I said, wait. I thought this man said he know my math. He dropped out of school. No, but you don't take everyday things and apply it. Culture for crime prevention. When younger people are disruptive at school and then we keep suspending them and expelling them, they then go into criminal behavior. Then there are some who are high achieving and do really well, but the curriculum is too slow for them. They too will get attracted to other sectors. But if you put them in some programs where they can hone those skills and burn off that energy. There's a guy that had indicated he was so hyper, but he used to run, and then they have put him into dance, and if he could have do dancing early in the morning, he could have concentrated the entire school day for 8 hours, burn the energy and settle. When we have young people in these activities, you end up with a different type of society. And then national identity, you don't have to fight against foreign intrusion there because it's already embedded from an early age because it's already in the curriculum. So culture is a force to be reckoned with if we really want to embed it in the spaces that we have access to. Culture as a tool for crime prevention is easy. The police will tell you that. I'm not sure, it's probably not unique to Barbados. Our prisoners bake some of the best breads and win culinary awards. There are some of the best visual artists, and we have an educator here that said criminals don't become artists when they go to jail. They had the natural inclination, but now they had the opportunity to maximize it. Because we know the cost of a good canvas and good paint, nobody's going to do that, right? The parent would then do the math. It's easier for you to go and do track and field because you just need your 2 feet, but now you come home telling me about canvas and oil and what is this? You can paint the house? They don't have money for that. But if you have a program that supports that from early, you don't know where you can go. The Caribbean has people with untapped imagination and experience, and we have the spaces and access to it. We have our diaspora. So I was listening to our colleague from Grenada and I like that you rubbish the argument from Google, because in a size thing, the size of the Caribbean is not what we see when we arrive at home and we touch down in the airport. It's much bigger than that. It's much bigger than the diaspora. People love Caribbean culture. People love it so much they imitate our accents. I see all the videos y'all do a Barbadian accent. I know. I am onto it. Okay, so we look at how culture is transversal and is in all these sectors. And then we look at culture and creative trade in creative goods and services. We kind of lag a bit here. We have a lot going on with Protocol 3, and we looked at that with our culture policy. We did listen to our colleague when he said we need access to the local market. How do we do that? How do we incentivize this? How do we give concessions for this? We need to start to think creatively, because government can't always give cash funds, but we can incentivize some things, right? But in terms of culture, creative goods and services, I know it's attractive to always look at the North, but the global South is untapped, right? I don't know if we understand the level of wealth that's out there, but I don't know if we are willing to continue to look to, well, there's still relationships. We don't want to, we are not in the business of torching everything, but we also need to look at the global South. And then first look at home. You know, we say home drum beats first. The Caribbean is vast. The Caribbean is vast, right? I know we look at our salary and say Caribbean people can't afford it, but we know Caribbean people will spend money on quality. And therefore, we need to work with our people to get that level of quality. But trade is important, because our own individual countries, the scale is small. But if we do make sure that we maximize our cultural cooperation agreements and do it effectively, I know we all want to be the first to do it, but collectively the Caribbean is a force, and we therefore need to maximize that. And we address that as well in our culture policy. Okay, Hannah, I'm coming down. And then we want to look at culture as a vector for change and transformation. The 21st century is becoming a space where you can begin to articulate what's going to happen from one month to another, right? You're learning new things, and it's rapidly changing. But that doesn't mean that when it comes to things like AI, we can't leverage it effectively. We can't create in our own space within the region more images, our quality images, our outputs that are Caribbean in their orientation. It doesn't mean that we cannot use culture to do some of the transformational things we want to do at the national level. Culture is capable of doing this, and we've seen it. The thing is that if we don't have the numbers to show, because it is making that impact, if we don't have the numbers to show, we're not going to attract the financing that we desire. Before I go on to I'm going to go on to the last one, and then I'm going to say some closing things. Legislate. It's all good to take all of these things and say all of these things and then hope that you get a minister that is interested in the sector and benevolent to creatives. But we want the rights of the artists to be protected. We cannot, it is to our benefit that we have a prime minister who's a creative. A prime minister would have already, persons would know she was a band manager. She's a lawyer. She's into the visual arts, supports the visual arts. And therefore, culture is a priority for our prime minister. But we want that the status of the artist is secured. It can be secured within the Constitution as well. We need to make sure that we do not leave it up to the benevolence of human nature, human beings who are interested in it, but that we secure it, is legislated. And that we incentivize it effectively. It's good to have the registries. It's good to be able to have the incentives. But are they doing more beyond just giving concessions? And what does this look like? What does this look like for private investors? We tell people it's important. Then we get the data to show it's important. And then what? One of our colleagues said today, you don't want to have the data, just admire it. Right? We might steal you from him. Because you have to go beyond that. The data is important for policy making, but then what? Because we can't, and then our colleague from South Africa let us know that when they found out it was 3% of their GDP was the contribution of the creative sector. Everyone applauded, they were excited about it. She said the next year they did the research and it was still 3%, everybody applauded, and then she said by the third year, they got less and less because they saw no action. Now that you know this, then what? Because when the tourism sector presents their results, we see more concessions, we see more incentives coming, right? So then what about the creative sector? I'm not going to rate my colleagues with tourism. I know we are partners, but I know sun, sea, and sand is natural heritage. I know museums are artwork that's, tangible. I know music, dance, and tangible cultural heritage, so I think you might be marketing what we have. But they get to count every non-resident head coming through. How are we counting to be counted? Our culture policy must reflect this. We can no longer do culture policy based on how we feel, our intuition, or the feeling that we get. That might be indigestion, right? It has to be based on facts. When you go to people, they want hardcore facts. But after you've presented this to the sector, what are you doing to make it a reality? Because then people think you've wasted their time. Because you said I'm a part and I've demonstrated this, then what are we going to do? And this is where we need our registries to be effective. This is where we need to make sure that our access to global markets are strong, that we have our people over there, invest Jamaica, invest Barbados, export Jamaica, export Barbados, make sure that they're robust enough to get our people into global markets. And Hannah, you'll be very happy at what's going to happen next. One of the things we noted about the data, and this is now to creators, no longer talking to policymakers, we know our work that we have to do. And I'm going to be honest here, I'm not speaking for all policy officials, okay? We work with limited resources. We are stretched. And this is why I emphasize the importance for us in doing our culture policy. In working with associations and institutions, we are stretched. Partnerships are important. Private sector partnerships are important. But one of the things we noticed in the data collection, and we're analyzing the data now, the sector from the preliminary analysis makes excellent money. We're happy about this because we're going back to the Minister of Finance. You want some incentives, but we had significant underreporting. Can't argue if there's no information. Because it says significant underreporting, but it means then we have to go back out next year and be more robust. But then if we get that again another year, then this is straight. If nobody wants to declare, this thing about the taxman coming after you and the taxman is going to get to know all your information, well, you already gave it to Google and Facebook anyways. And every free platform that's tracking you, right? And Zara knows everything that we own. And the credit card company know that you're in debt. But everybody else has your information. Right? The bank knows you're making a lot of money. But we also need to guarantee creators that irrespective of whether they're sharing data or we are sharing our data out there, they can trust us to know that we will keep things anonymous, that we collect the data and it's used for the reason we said we are going to collect it. Right? You cannot build a relationship with lies. I mean, there are people that try, and that's why I said I'm not going to use marriage. But nevertheless, the point is you have to have a relationship that works and functions effectively. And to do that, you need trust. That people can say that if I come to the ministry and they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. If they can't, they explain why, and I trust what I get. On the other hand, if we have underreporting, that's problematic too. And therefore, the culture policy might be evidence-based, but it's not based on the reality. So if you see the problem there, you have the data, but it's only half of the picture, right? And that doesn't help policymakers either. So we really need a relationship which works both ways. Trust in getting the data, but also that when you are asked the questions, when people say, why do you want to know my financial information? The thing is though, we've noticed, if you notice the trend, those sectors that report how much they're making get incentivized better because we want you to make more money. We want to be able to make sure that you are thriving. And therefore, if you tell us how good you're doing and we can see it and the data shows it, then if I incentivize you even more, you're going to earn more. If I don't know and you feel threatened to hide the information, to hide the money, and to hide the assets, and to under-declare, that's the word, then we are going to remain at the situation where we are. And what we would have faced before, we continue to endure. That's not a possibility anymore. We cannot continue with business as usual. Things have changed drastically, and so too we must. But what we need to make sure is that we both have a relationship of trust. And that came out in our research for the cultural policy, not just for the quantitative data, to collect the data, but going back to persons and saying what we found, what's happening, and making sure that there's always that level of dialogue, but to make sure that what we have is effective to change people's lives. It's not enough to take the information and you don't see it. So my closing remarks. Hannah, are you happy now? Where is she? And I made sure everyone understood my Bajan today, because you don't know this thing could have gone different. But when we talk about banking on culture and cultural policy, we know we need the data for investors to come on board. We need the data for the banks to open up more access to creatives to get affordable financing. This high interest thing, don't play the games, because we know that you're offering low interest rates to other people. We know that banks have financed airports and runways that have never been used. We know that banks have financed factories that have never been opened. We know that banks have financed hospitals that have never seen a patient and are still falling apart. But we know that if you bank on us, you get good returns. If you bank on us, you are going to make sure your government has profitability. If you bank on us, the GDP will grow. If you bank on us, we all will eat well. Thank you. Lunch. So we're going to start back with a session at 12. We're no break for lunch, and then we have the session with the president of the Caribbean Development Bank, banking on culture, make it make sense. Y'all understood that, right? It's not, you know, someone don't understand Bajan, but you know, we don't understand, be good enough. So we're going to break for lunch now, and then we're going to have the session, make it make sense. And then after that, we are going to have a session with our grantees, persons who've received financing, to speak about the planning, the pain, the profit, the pitfalls, and also the successes that they have. We're going to have a frank discussion with our creators, but there'll be a break in between that as well. Thank you very much, everyone. We start back at 11:55.